Listen, it is easier to gather people up. It's harder to evangelize them. 2 Corinthians chapter 5 says we are on a ministry, we have been given the ministry of reconciliation. That is, in Christ, God was reconciling the world to himself, and he has given us the ministry of reconciliation. So the ministry of reconciliation teaches us that God and men and women are at odds. There is a need of reconciliation. Jesus is the means of that reconciliation. We are the agents of that reconciliation. We are given the ministry of reconciliation. The problem is, for too many church planners, they'd rather be on a mission of recruitment than one of reconciliation. So they want to recruit Christians rather than see lost people reconciled to God. I see it all the time. I see it. Some church wants to be the newest, most contemporary church in town, so they gather up the contemporary people, and it works. It works. The church grows. Some churches want to be the most Pentecostal, charismatic church in town, and it gathers up the Pentecostals and the charismatics, and it works. Until a more contemporary church or a more Pentecostal or charismatic church comes along, and then they go to that next one. Why? Because they're gathering up and they're looking for that new opportunity. And sometimes people want to be the new Reformed church in town. And then they gather up until someone comes on and gets a little more Reformed. And they go out to there, and it continues that pattern. Listen, do not make it your ambition to plant a Reformed church. Make it your ambition to plant the gospel, to teach the scriptures, and that will shape your theology. If you lead with, look, we're creating a new church so we can celebrate a theological system, you will attract all the people who've just been waiting because they're sick and tired of the church they've been going to. But if I can just go to yours, they'll ruin it too. But there's a danger. And I see it in some of our Acts 29 church plants. See, there's a difference between church starting and church planting in the way that we refer to it, kind of in the insider language. Church starting, a lot of people start churches, right? People get together and say, I want to start a church. I want to start this kind of church, that kind of church. I remember when I used to teach here at Southern Seminary, and some of you may remember that as well. While I was teaching there, one of my students was Steve McCoy. Steve, you're back there. Where are you, Steve? Steve's right there. No, he's pointing someone else. Because I got Steve's permission to share him as a bad example. And so you got to check on stuff like that. But Steve and I are friends. Steve's just an incredible writer, an incredible thinker, doing a great job pastoring in Illinois. But when Steve was a student here and I was a professor here, Steve came to me. And this was the first time that I got in trouble at Southern Seminary. Not the last, but it was the first time that I got in trouble. Because Steve came to me and said, man, I want to plant a church. And as I remember it, and Steve said whatever I say he's going to agree with so I don't look like I made it up. As I remember, Steve came to me and said, I want to plant a Reformed church. There's all these students and they're going to these churches and we need a Reformed church in town. I want to plant a church, gather people together, and that's what I want to do. And I said, no. Now, what I said no is I wouldn't pay him to do that. I mean, I guess he could still go out and do it. In our denomination, pretty much, a houseplant can go plant a church as long as they don't want money. And so I said, no, we wouldn't fund you that. Well, Steve wasn't happy with it, and soon a lot of people weren't happy with it. But we were texting back and forth while Dave was preaching. Sorry about that, Dave. And at one point he said, yeah, you called it, you weren't going to let me plant a church on a pet doctrine. And by now, I've offended most of you in the room. And that was sort of my intent. But my point was with Steve, and later on he thanked me for that, because my point is that one of the dangers that when you come from a theologically robust movement like Acts 29 is that really you're more interested in planting a church that reflects the theologically robust movement that's there than planting the gospel, which would birth a theologically robust church. And so what happens is you put it out there and say, yeah, we're going to plant this church. And so what happens is you gather up all these people and you end up recruiting people, right? You start getting all the seeker church refugees, and they trade in their Hawaiian shirts for your black shirts and jeans. And all you've ended up doing is creating a new expression of church. No, lost people have been changed by the power of the gospel. And I want you to know, don't make it your ambition to plant a Reformed church. Plant the gospel, teach the scriptures, and your theology will be shaped out of that. And I happen to think you'll end up at that place. Now, the problem is you plant an issue church, you end up with issue people. And do you really want any more of those young, single, angry Reformed guys?